Hey, Soul Stories fam. Today's love story will make you blush, sigh, and maybe throw a pillow. Rate it from 1 to 10 in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe and ring that bell like it owes you money. A typical New York noon. Traffic roaring, horns blaring, streets packed with people in a rush. Harper Lane, 27, lived alone in a tiny rented apartment in Brooklyn. She juggled multiple jobs to make ends meet, including food delivery, cafe waitress, and freelance illustration gigs. Harper wasn't the type to live slowly. She was a mix of energy, quick wit, and unpredictable adaptability. But she also had a special talent. She wasn't proud of being clumsy in situations that should have been simple. Today, Harper was pedaling her battered delivery bike, a large backpack stuffed with steaming hot food strapped to her back. She turned onto Fifth Avenue, pulling out her phone to check the address. Was it 24B or 24D? Damn it, I forgot to look carefully, she muttered, steering with one hand while scrolling with her thumb. In that split second of distraction, something shiny and olive green appeared in her line of sight, an Aston Martin, parked neatly at the curb, glinting under the sunlight. Screech! Thud! Her right pedal scraped hard against the car door, leaving a glaring scratch across the glossy paint. Harper froze. Her heart pounded like she'd just been caught stealing cookies from the kitchen. No way, she whispered, face turning pale. Images flashed in her mind of paying an amount equivalent to an entire year's rent, plus a few extra months. Just then, the cafe door nearby swung open. Alexander Reed stepped out, tall, wearing a tailored gray suit, deep blue tie, and neatly combed black hair. His cold gray eyes swept over the car, stopped at the scratch, and then slowly lifted to Harper. She swallowed hard, feeling like she was standing before a judge. His voice was deep and sharp, no need to shout, yet enough to make her shiver. Do you have any idea how much this car is worth? All Harper could think of was a future filled with instant noodles and sharing her cramped apartment with stacks of art supplies. Her hand holding the phone trembled. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to, she stammered, her voice quivering like it was caught in a draft. Alexander crossed his arms, gaze cutting right through her. Sorry doesn't erase the scratch. Harper tightened her grip on her backpack straps, her brain firing at full speed. If she just stood there, she was doomed. She had to do something now. And then a spark of an idea. Wait, I have a solution. She quickly dug into the pocket of her hoodie and pulled out a bottle of olive green nail polish she'd bought on sale that morning. Alexander frowned. You're not going to... Before he could finish, Harper twisted the cap open, bent down, dabbed the polish carefully over the scratch, and blew on it. There, almost as good as new. If you don't say anything, no one will notice. You just saved yourself a few $1,000 on a paint job. Alexander stared at her, then at the scratch now camouflaged in a shade far glossier than the original. The corner of his mouth twitched not with anger, but with the beginnings of a laugh, a short, genuine one that made Harper look up in surprise. You! He shook his head, equal parts annoyed and amused. This is the first time I've seen someone fix a luxury car with nail polish. Harper exhaled in relief, seizing the moment. Yup, exclusive service, no charge. Now, if you'll excuse me, I need to deliver this food before the customer gets hungry. That might be even more dangerous than you. Alexander looked at her for another moment, his gaze less icy now, tinged with curiosity. What's your name? Harper Lane. We'll meet again, Harper Lane. That sentence sent another shiver down her spine, but this time, it wasn't just fear. There was something else, something strange, as if today's trouble and story had only just begun. Harper thought she was off the hook, but just as she turned her bike to leave, that deep voice came from behind. Wait, leave me your information. She froze on the sidewalk. Swallowing hard, she tried to find an excuse, but her mind went blank. Your name. His voice was low, steady, with no hesitation. Harper Lane, she answered, sounding like she was checking in with a strict teacher. Address, phone number. He continued, his tone more like a command than a request. Harper blinked, still not processing. What do you want it for? To send you the invoice. Just 3 words, but it was like a bucket of ice water dumped over her head. In her mind, the worst-case scenario played out. A bill for several $1,000s, her bank account sinking into a black hole, and her surviving on dry instant noodles. Uh, but I don't have that kind of money, she murmured. Alexander's expression didn't change. Then leave me your information. We'll discuss the money later. Reluctantly, Harper slid her backpack off her shoulders, dug into her hoodie pocket, and pulled out a small notebook and a pencil. Her hand trembled slightly as she wrote her name, phone number, and email address. Then, hesitating for a second, she added one more line at the bottom. I can draw too. If you'd like, I can give you a free portrait. Handing him the paper, she forced a weak smile, her optimism just barely holding on. Consider it emotional compensation. Who knows, maybe one day that drawing will be worth more than your car repair bill. Alexander glanced down at the paper. When he read the last line, one eyebrow lifted slightly, and his gaze shifted no longer angry or disdainful, but tinged with surprise and interest. Portrait? He asked, his tone still deep but softer. Yes. Harper nodded, mustering the courage to speak quickly. I'm a freelance illustrator. Not exactly a golden brush, but I promise it'll be unique and accurate. He was silent for a few seconds, still studying her. Harper swallowed, wondering if she'd just saved herself or dug a deeper hole. Finally, Alexander folded the paper and slipped it into the inside pocket of his suit jacket. Instead of walking away, he pulled a leather wallet from his pants pocket, took out a slim, matte black business card and held it out to her. Keep it. Harper hesitated but took it. Only a few embossed words stood out. Alexander Reed, CEO, Reed Motors. Beneath it were the showroom address and his direct contact number. She raised an eyebrow. So you own a car showroom? Alexander simply replied, more than that. The cryptic answer sent a slight shiver down her spine. She tucked the card into her hoodie pocket, tightened her backpack straps, and carefully wheeled her bike away from the Aston Martin. Before she got too far, his voice came again, calm but layered with meaning. I'll be in touch. Harper rode off, but her heart kept pounding the entire way. She felt both nervous and strangely intrigued. A man like him, with a car like that, should have called the police or yelled at her, yet instead, he handed her his card and said he'd be in touch. That evening, Harper's tiny apartment glowed with warm yellow light, the faint scent of paint and paper in the air. She sat in a wobbly wooden chair, laptop open with her comic illustration software, pencil still in hand. On the table next to a cold cup of tea lay Alexander's matte black business card. She kept glancing at it like it was a mysterious puzzle piece, unsure whether to keep it or toss it. If he actually sends me an invoice, I'm doomed, Harper muttered, sketching out a comic panel of today's events, a food delivery girl, a luxury car, and a bottle of nail polish saving the day. A sudden ping of a new email made her jump. She opened her inbox. From Alexander Reed. Subject, tomorrow. Message. Come to my showroom at 10 a.m. tomorrow. I have a task for you. Harper blinked repeatedly. No greeting, no thank you, no explanation, just a short, cold message, like a summons. She leaned back in her chair and laughed to herself. What is this? Invoice turned into a task? What if he makes me clean the entire lineup of cars to get back at me? But out of habit, she opened Google Maps and typed in the showroom address from the card. The location popped up in the heart of Manhattan, a gleaming, high-end glass building that looked more like an automotive museum than a dealership. A mix of worry and curiosity quickened her pulse. She knew she should refuse, but part of her wanted to see what exactly this task was. She smirked to herself. All right, Mr. Reed, let's see who's really surprised tomorrow. Little did Harper know the next morning would mark the start of a chain of strange events pulling her from the life of an ordinary food delivery girl straight into the whirlpool of a game Alexander had been setting in motion from the moment they met. The next morning, Harper stood before a gleaming glass building in the heart of Manhattan, tilting her head back to read the sign. Reed Motors. The polished facade caught the sunlight, and the luxury cars displayed just beyond the glass looked as if they were deliberately showing off. Harper tightened the straps of her backpack and sighed. Looks like a car museum. If I scratch another one, I might as well move to Alaska. Stepping inside, she was instantly awed. A vast open space, a floor so shiny it mirrored her image, and lights perfectly angled to trace every curve of the cars. One glance downward, and she could practically check her makeup in the tiles. A young receptionist in a neatly pressed black suit greeted her with a professional smile. "Good morning. You are?" "Harper Lane. I have an appointment with Alexander Reed." At the mention of the name, the receptionist's brows rose slightly. She picked up the internal phone. "Mr. Reed, Ms. Harper Lane has arrived." In less than a minute, Alexander appeared from the hallway. Gray suit, deep blue tie, his stride unhurried yet certain. Without a greeting, he gestured. "Follow me," Harper muttered inwardly. "Bet I'll be polishing cars from morning till night." Still, she followed, sneaking glances at the Aston Martins, Lamborghinis, and Ferraris lined up like royalty. Alexander led her into a small conference room. On the table were several mood boards, sample photos of a new car model, and a few preliminary design drafts. "Sit," he said curtly. Harper sat, clasping her hands together like a student awaiting her turn at the blackboard. "So, what's the task? Do I need a polishing cloth or a bottle of wax?" she asked, half joking, half testing the waters. The corner of Alexander's mouth curved slightly. "Number I want you to draw." Harper blinked. "Draw? I thought—" He cut her off. "We're preparing a promotional campaign for the new model. I want to know if your funny little brain is truly creative or just good at quick fixes." Harper grinned wryly. "You call saving your car's scratch with nail polish a quick fix? That was emergency-level creativity." Alexander tilted his head slightly, his gaze challenging. "Prove it." He slid a large sheet of paper and a box of colored markers toward her. "Theme, the new model. Time limit, 30 minutes. Surprise me. If I'm impressed, maybe I'll forget about the invoice." At that, Harper's eyes widened. Her heart sped up. Was this her chance to escape debt? The mental image of a massive invoice looming like a bomb over her head since yesterday suddenly faded a shade. Harper gripped the marker and took a deep breath. At first she thought of drawing something sleek and elegant, but then a different idea flashed through her mind. Pure Harper, quirky and cheeky. She began sketching quickly, her strokes confident. The car's curves appeared on the page, but with outrageous upgrades. A crown perched on its roof, sunglasses on its headlights, and a wide, overly confident grin. Harper pressed her lips together to stifle a laugh as she imagined the slogan. Alexander stood in the corner, arms folded, occasionally glancing at his watch but unable to look away for long from the woman fully absorbed in her work. Loose strands of hair brushing her cheek, hand moving fast as if she were drawing for herself alone. "Done!" Harper looked up exactly at the 30-minute mark, sliding the paper toward him. An employee passing by peeked in and burst out laughing. "Oh wow, this is going viral for sure." The drawing showed Reed Motors' new model in cartoon style, wearing a crown and sunglasses, with a hand-lettered slogan beneath. "Not just a car, this is your second love." A few more employees gathered, and soon the room was filled with laughter. Alexander picked up the sketch, studying every detail. Harper kept her face neutral, though her heart thumped hard. "Come on, laugh. So I don't have to sell a kidney." The corner of his mouth lifted, his eyes glinting with explicit approval. "Not bad. Could you make a few more like this?" Harper leaned on the table with a sly smile. "So I've passed the test and might get a reduced sentence?" Alexander set the drawing down and met her eyes. "Call it a trial period. Unpaid. But if the results are good, the invoice will disappear. I might even consider covering a modest living allowance for you." Harper let out a dramatic sigh. "Tempting offer, but remember, I only work if there's free coffee." This time Alexander actually laughed, a short, deep sound that made Harper suddenly realize. When he wasn't frowning, the man didn't look bad at all. As she left the showroom, Harper walked down the street whistling. The looming multi-thousand-dollar invoice had been replaced with a new hope, if she could get the cold CEO to laugh a few more times. Maybe the debt would one day be nothing more than a funny story. From the very first week of her trial period, Harper had already managed to leave an unmistakable mark on Reed Motors' showroom. On Monday morning, she was assigned to bring coffee to Alexander before he signed a major contract with an important client. Harper carried the coffee tray into the meeting room with the seriousness of a cat burglar, stepping lightly. But just as she set the cup on the table, her foot caught on the charging cable for Alexander's laptop. Swipe! The coffee cup tipped, dark liquid rippling, and splashing onto the corner of the pristine, white contract. Harper froze and Alexander looked up, his gray-blue eyes turning icy. The client paused as well, lifting the paper, coffee dripping in tiny drops onto the table. I'm so sorry, but on the bright side, you now have a one-of-a-kind latte-colored contract, Harper blurted. Silence filled the room for a few seconds, then the client burst out laughing. She's funny, Reed. At least now the contract looks less dry. Alexander gave Harper a look that clearly said, "You're lucky," but the corner of his mouth twitched upward, something Harper quietly counted as a small victory. By midweek, another memorable incident took place. Alexander was hosting a VIP delegation from Europe, presenting the new car line in the large conference room. Harper's task was to take a few behind-the-scenes shots for the marketing campaign quietly. Everything was going smoothly until her phone, tucked inside her hoodie pocket, suddenly blared. At first I was afraid. I was petrified. Harper froze, eyes wide. It was the remix of "I Will Survive" she'd set as her ringtone to remind herself to push through every deadline. The entire room turned to stare. A few guests raised their brows, and Alexander blinked twice before letting out a very slow breath. Harper gave a sheepish smile, fumbling to silence the phone. Sorry, just a little self-motivation. Unexpectedly, an older gentleman chuckled heartily. I like her. In my company, everyone should hear that song every morning. The stiff atmosphere instantly lightened. Alexander noticed, and when his eyes met Harper's, he shook his head this time, clearly less annoyed than before. On Friday, Harper stirred things up again while trying to adjust the display angle of a car for a photo. She didn't realize she was leaning against the ignition button. The engine roared to life, startling a female customer. Oh, I was testing the lighting effect, Harper said quickly, her face as red as a tomato. Alexander stepped over, switched the engine off, and said firmly, Harper, this showroom isn't a stage play. But if it were, you'd be the lead actor, she shot back with a mischievous grin. He paused for a second at that, then turned away slightly to hide his smile. Despite the string of minor accidents, Harper seemed to have a strange talent. Every time she appeared, the atmosphere noticeably relaxed. Alexander began to realize this while reviewing the week's reports. New contracts signed, tense client meetings, tough negotiations. They all had one thing in common. Harper had been there, and at least once she'd made someone laugh. He remembered Tuesday lunchtime when he was discussing import prices with a demanding client, and Harper walked past carrying a box of donuts, muttering, Pastries are the savior of every negotiation. The client laughed, and suddenly the discussion went far more smoothly. On Thursday morning, when she adjusted his chair a few inches lower before a meeting, when he sat down, he found himself peering over the desk like a child, and Harper deadpanned. A new perspective helps keep you humble. Even he couldn't hold back a laugh that time. Late Friday, as staff were tidying up, Harper passed Alexander's office and saw him standing by the window, looking out at the street. What are you thinking about? Wondering what trouble I'll cause next? She asked, leaning against the doorframe. Alexander turned, his gaze calm but deeper than usual. I'm thinking, this place has been less tense since you got here. Harper blinked, caught off guard by the blunt admission. So, does that mean my invoice has a chance of disappearing? She asked, half joking, half hopeful. He studied her for a long moment before replying. There's always a chance if you keep making people remember you for the right reasons. Harper grinned. So I still get to cause incidents, but the good kind. Fine, I'll take the job. Alexander gave a slight nod, the corner of his mouth lifting. He didn't say it, But he knew he was already starting to look forward to the moment the showroom doors opened and Harper walked in, bringing with her an unpredictable burst of energy. The promotional campaign for the new car model, featuring Harper's quirky illustrations, turned out to be a bigger success than anyone had predicted. In just 1 week, showroom foot traffic noticeably increased, especially among younger customers. They came not only to see the cars, but also to take photos with Harper's out-of-the-box posters. A car wearing a furry winter hat, a car dressed in a tuxedo heading to a gala, and even one of a car slurping ramen. Alexander didn't say much, but Harper noticed he often lingered in front of the drawings, a flicker of something in his eyes that didn't match his usual cold demeanor. One evening, Harper stayed late at the showroom to finish a few more sketches. Most of the lights were off, leaving only her desk lamp casting a warm glow over the stack of drawings. She opened her laptop and clicked on a folder labeled Showroom Diaries, a humorous comic series she had been drawing about the showroom itself, with characters subtly altered. The cold, aloof boss became Mr. Ice, a man so in love with cars he hugged the steering wheel to sleep. The receptionist became the smiling goddess, who answered calls with a voice sweeter than candy. And Harper herself became the hoodie girl, a clumsy character blessed with the ability to cause positive chaos. Harper chuckled to herself as she drew a scene where Mr. Ice secretly polished a car with a handkerchief embroidered with the letter A. "What's this?" a deep voice said behind her. Harper jumped so hard she nearly drew a stray line across the page. She turned to see Alexander leaning against the doorway, arms crossed, eyes fixed on her screen. This is just something I draw for fun," she stammered, quickly closing the file. "It's not related to work. I'll delete it if you want." Alexander walked closer, his expression unreadable. "For fun? And you've made a whole series?" "Well, it's just to de-stress. Don't get me wrong, I'm not mocking you. I just took some creative liberties," Harper said quickly, worried he'd think it was unprofessional and fire her on the spot. But instead of looking offended, Alexander pulled out the chair next to her and sat down. "Open it again. Let me see." Harper hesitated, then clicked the file open. Page after page appeared colorful, witty, and full of exaggerated, yet oddly charming characters. When he reached the page where Mr. Ice repaired a scratch with olive green nail polish, Alexander actually laughed out loud. It was a deep, short laugh, but genuine. "You really are one of a kind," he said, eyes still on the screen. "Post this on the company's Instagram." Harper's eyes went wide. "What? This is a comic, not a serious ad." "Exactly," Alexander leaned back in his chair. "It's real, it's fun, it's approachable. The younger crowd will love it. Let them see this showroom sells more than cars, it has personality." Harper still looked unsure. "You're certain? What if people misunderstand?" "Trust me, this will be a better PR boost than any expensive ad campaign," Alexander cut in, his voice firm. 3 days later, a shortened version of Showroom Diaries appeared on Reed Motors' official Instagram. The first post racked up thousands of likes within hours. Comments flooded in. "Oh my God, this showroom is adorable. Mr. Ice equals my new crush. We need more episodes about the hoodie girl, clumsy but cute." Even auto news outlets began sharing it, calling it a clever, soft marketing move by Reed Motors. Showroom visits from young customers doubled. Some even came wearing yellow hoodies and baseball caps, just like Harper's, to take check-in photos. One evening, as Harper was putting up a new poster, Alexander handed her a cup of hot coffee. "Well done, hoodie girl." Harper laughed. "Did you just call me by my character's name?" "Well, it's you," Alexander shrugged. "And now the hoodie girl has brought in more contracts than all our costly ad campaigns combined." Harper took a sip of coffee, then eyed him playfully. "So, the car repair bill, we're done with that, right?" Alexander paused for a second, the corner of his mouth lifting. "Not yet. I still haven't taken the car in, so I don't know the total damage. You still owe me." Harper widened her eyes. "Meaning I have to work here until you get tired of me?" Alexander looked straight at her, something in his gaze that felt like more than just business. "Let's just say That might take a while. Harper pretended to sigh, but her lips curved upward anyway. At least now she had a perfectly good reason to stay and keep shaking things up in this showroom. On Monday morning, Harper had barely set her backpack on her desk when she saw Alexander at the reception counter, crisp white shirt tucked in, holding a stack of files as thick as a phone book. "Are you free for the next 3 days?" he asked, skipping any form of greeting. Harper raised a brow. "Is this an invitation or a kidnapping plan?" Without blinking, Alexander replied, "International Auto Conference in Miami. I need someone to capture behind the scenes for the media campaign. The media team's tied up. You're coming with me." "Wait, me? Miami? You're not worried I might knock over a display or spill coffee on an international contract?" Harper's eyes widened. "I'm definitely worried, but I'm more worried about leaving you alone in the showroom." His tone was as casual as if he were talking about changing a tire. Harper folded her arms. "And the car repair bill?" He shrugged, the corner of his mouth twitching upward. "Consider this trip part of your repayment plan." 3 hours later, Harper was at JFK Airport, still not quite believing she was about to fly business class. Stepping into the cabin, she froze, eyes wide. "Oh my gosh, this seat is the size of my entire apartment." Alexander came up behind her, sliding past with a quiet but pointed remark. "Hopefully you're not planning to sleep here for 3 days straight." Harper settled into the seat beside him and immediately found the control button. One press, and the seat slid back into a bed. "Oh, this is nice." Then she rummaged through the amenities kit, pulling out a gray sleep mask. "So fancy," she exclaimed and promptly put it on upside down, the eye cover sitting on her forehead, the strap looped under her chin. Alexander glanced over, taking a full 3 seconds to decide whether to say anything. Finally, he asked, "Protecting your third chakra?" Harper paused, then took it off and laughed awkwardly. Uh, just starting a new trend." When the flight attendant brought breakfast, Harper observed Alexander like a new student watching the teacher. A crisp white napkin was set in front of her. Harper nodded approvingly. "Wow, so thoughtful. They even give us a cleaning cloth." She dipped the napkin into her water glass and began wiping the tray table. Alexander set down his knife and gave her a look like he'd just seen someone use olive oil to wash a car. "That's a napkin." Harper froze, holding up the now soaked cloth. "Well, at least it's clean enough to wipe my mouth now." The flight attendant tried not to laugh, while Alexander turned his head away, but Harper still caught the subtle shake of his shoulders. Throughout the flight, Harper took pictures of everything: the frothy cappuccino, the complimentary socks, even Alexander dozing over his laptop. "This one's getting the caption, 'CEOs are human too, guaranteed to get 1 million likes,'" she said with a grin. Alexander cracked one eye open. "Post that, and your repair bill doubles." Harper hugged her phone to her chest. "Fine, but I'm keeping it as my wallpaper." When the plane landed, she pressed her face to the window, marveling at the turquoise ocean, golden sunlight, and palm trees swaying as if waving hello. "This is my first time leaving New York," she blurted out. Alexander tilted his head toward her, his expression softening briefly, but all he said was, "Then make the most of it, and don't lose your return ticket." Their hotel was right on the beach, and Harper's room had a balcony facing the ocean. Stepping outside, she took a deep breath of the salty air, thinking, if paying off debt feels like this, maybe I'll ask for an extended payment plan. The next morning, Alexander emerged from his room in a light gray suit and ocean blue tie. Harper appeared with a camera around her neck, hair in a messy bun, and sunglasses covering nearly half her face. "Are you here to work or attend a costume party?" he asked. "An artist's style has to stay mysterious," Harper replied smoothly. At the conference, Harper darted around snapping shots of everything: new cars, visitors, staff explaining features. But just as Alexander was giving a live TV interview, Harper backed up for a wider angle and bumped into a display model car. Thud! The model wobbled, and Harper scrambled to steady it like it was a baby. "It's fine, fine." Alexander glanced over and gave a slight shake of his head. The strange thing was, he didn't look annoyed. She caught his expression as he turned back to the interviewer. It was as if he'd grown used to Hurricane Harper and maybe even found it amusing. That evening, Alexander invited Harper to dinner at a beachfront restaurant. Candles flickered, waves whispered against the sand. Harper rested her chin in her hand. Are you buying me dinner because I did a good job or because you're trying to bribe me? Both. He poured her a glass of wine. You did better today than I expected. Harper raised her brows. Whoa, CEO Alexander Reed just complimented me. Should we get that in writing? Alexander chuckled, low and genuine. Harper suddenly noticed her heart beating a little faster. At her hotel room door, she turned as if remembering something. So, after today, my repair bill's down by at least 50%, right? Leaning against the door frame, Alexander's look was half serious, half teasing. Number, I still haven't taken the car in, so I don't know the full cost. You still owe me, and you'll work for me until I say otherwise. Harper gave an exaggerated sigh, but her lips curved upward. Guess I'm on my way to becoming a permanent employee. Alexander didn't answer. He just smiled and closed the door. Harper stood there for a few seconds, feeling like she wanted to laugh, and yet, oddly, feeling a little warm inside. The second day of the International Auto Conference in Miami began with a packed schedule, the unveiling of the new model, meetings with potential partners, and most importantly, a contract signing with a significant European distribution group. Alexander had prepared meticulously for this meeting, knowing the deal was worth millions. Harper, in her role as the accidental behind-the-scenes photographer, only had to capture key moments and try not to cause trouble. Remember not bumping into display models or accidentally starting an engine today, Alexander said as they entered the conference hall. Yes, boss. I'll operate like a ninja, silent, swift, leaving no trace, Harper replied. But the mischievous smile on her face made Alexander feel slightly concerned. The meeting took place in a private conference room. Both sides discussed terms, everything going smoothly until one of the European representatives, an older, stern man, asked bluntly, Our market is already saturated, so what makes Reed Motors different enough to attract younger customers? And don't give me the usual talk about quality or service. The air dipped into a brief silence. Alexander paused, ready to give a strategic analysis, when Harper, standing in the corner taking photos, suddenly spoke up. Sorry, may I answer that? All eyes turned to her. Alexander frowned slightly but didn't stop her, perhaps curious to see what she'd say. Harper took a step forward, holding her camera like a microphone. Reed Motors is different because our cars aren't just vehicles. They're the main characters in your life story, like a companion always there when you need them, and sometimes the reason you have a funny story to tell. She paused, then smiled. For example, do you know why luxury car drivers often go slow? Because they want everyone to have enough time to notice the logo on the back. The room erupted in laughter, even from the stern representative. Harper went on. We understand that the younger generation doesn't just buy cars to get from point A to point B. They buy them to make memories, to tell stories, to post on Instagram. Reed Motors sells cars with personality, and that personality stays with them. The mood in the room instantly lightened. The representative chuckled, nodding. An interesting answer. I like the way you see it. Alexander smoothly followed up, presenting data and detailed marketing plans. By the end, both sides shook hands and signed the contract. As people filtered out, Alexander approached Harper, who was crouched down adjusting her lens, utterly unfazed by the fact she'd just salvaged a multi-million-dollar deal. You know you just blew up my entire presentation script, right? His tone was low but not cold. Harper looked up and winked. Yeah, but I blew it up in the right direction, didn't I? Alexander paused for a few seconds, then nodded. Yes, and I couldn't have come up with a better answer at that moment. I just do what I'm good at, making people laugh and remember, Harper said with a grin. With the contract sealed, Alexander surprised her. Let's get lunch. Consider it a reward. They chose a small beachfront cafe. Harper ordered a burger with fries. Alexander went for a tuna salad. Didn't expect you to eat so healthy, Harper commented, biting into a fry. When you run a company, you need a clear head, Alexander replied. And I need energy to think up my next stunt, Harper said with a playful wink. He shook his head, but the faint curve of his lips was becoming something Harper recognized as Alexander's version of a smile. That afternoon, they visited the vintage car exhibition, an event outside Reed Motors' official schedule. Harper eagerly photographed every detail: wooden steering wheels, worn leather seats, classic logos. While she crouched to capture a wheel's angle, Alexander asked from behind, "You really like this stuff?" "Love it," Harper replied. "Every scratch, every patch of faded paint has its own story, just like people." His gaze lingered on her for a moment. For the first time, Alexander saw Harper as more than a clumsy, quick-witted distraction. She was someone who looked deeper at things. That evening, instead of a fancy restaurant, Harper dragged him to the seaside night market. She led him through rows of street food stalls, sampling everything from tacos to coconut ice cream. "Ever had coconut ice cream?" Harper asked, handing him a spoon. He tasted it, nodding slightly. "Not bad." "Not bad? This is the masterpiece of tropical cuisine," Harper declared before finishing the rest herself. Alexander only shook his head, but his gaze on her was no longer cool observation. It was as if he was quietly enjoying the moment. Walking back to the hotel along the beach, the salty breeze and rhythmic waves wrapped around them. "Thank you for today," Alexander said suddenly. Harper blinked. "Thank me? For saving the contract or for dragging you to eat coconut ice cream?" "Both, but mostly for reminding me that sometimes being genuine and funny is more persuasive than any long presentation." Harper smiled. "So I get 10% off my repair bill?" Alexander chuckled softly. "Number. But you're getting closer to the point where I might consider it." They kept walking without another word, but the space between them, literally and figuratively, felt much smaller than it had that morning. Still following the story? If this story found you outside of Soul Stories, we invite you home, to where every touching tale begins with truth, hope, and heart. On the last morning in Miami, Harper woke earlier than usual. She planned to head down to the hotel lobby for a few early shots of the beach while the sunlight was still gentle, then grab a coffee to enjoy on her balcony. As the elevator doors slid open at the lobby, Harper caught a familiar low voice coming from a secluded corner near the bar. Alexander stood with his back to her, one hand in his pocket, the other holding a phone to his ear. His tone was different. Not the calm, controlled voice she heard in meetings, nor the clipped commands he gave employees. This was softer, warmer. "Yeah, don't worry, I'll be back in time. Make sure you take care of yourself and keep taking your medication." "I miss you too. Don't overwork yourself." Harper froze behind a large potted plant, her heart skipping faster than it should. "I miss you too?" The words echoed in her head, sharp and oddly bitter. Alexander rarely revealed emotion, yet with this person, his voice was tender. An unexpected pang, half disappointment, half unreasonable jealousy settled in her chest. She turned back toward the elevator, the coffee plan forgotten. Her mind was a jumble. So that's it. I thought, well, maybe these past few days meant something, but he already has a girlfriend, or someone important waiting for him at home. Every moment in Miami replayed in her mind: the evening by the shore, his rare laughter, the look he gave her when she'd saved the big contract. All of it seemed to fade under the mist of reality. "All right, Harper," she told herself. "Don't be the side character in someone else's story. Back to work mode. Keep your distance. No emotions involved." All morning at the conference, she did her job photographing, filming behind the scenes, capturing guest moments. But unlike usual, she didn't toss in her ice-breaking jokes or wander near Alexander unless it was strictly necessary. During the break, Alexander handed her a cold bottle of water. "It's hot today, drink." "Thanks." Harper took it, nodded briefly, and turned to check her shots on the camera. He tilted his head slightly, studying her. "You're unusually quiet today. Something wrong?" "Number, I'm just focused on work," she said, her voice neutral. He looked at her a moment longer, then let it drop. That afternoon, when the event ended early, Alexander approached her. "I want to try a famous seafood place nearby tonight. Join me?" Harper hesitated, then shook her head with a polite smile. "I think I'll have something light at the hotel. I'm probably just tired." His gaze lingered, as if weighing something. "Suit yourself. he said in a lower tone before walking away. She watched him go, feeling a faint ache in her chest. She was the one refusing, yet it still felt like she'd just let something important slip by. Back in her hotel room, the quiet was filled only by the distant sound of waves. Harper sat on the balcony with her laptop open, but her eyes kept drifting. The morning scene replayed again. Alexander on the phone. That gentle voice. Words meant for someone else. Her phone buzzed. A message from Alexander. "If you change your mind, I still have the table." Harper stared at the screen for a moment, her fingers hovering over the keyboard. In the end, she set the phone down, leaning back in her chair and staring out at the dark ocean. Almost an hour later, she headed down to the lobby to buy a drink from the mini-mart. To her surprise, Alexander was sitting in the lounge near the entrance, tie off, flipping through a car magazine. He looked up. "Thought you'd be asleep by now." "I came down for some water," Harper replied, a little flustered. "We're flying back tomorrow." "Get some rest," he said, his eyes dropping back to the magazine. She nodded and walked on quickly. The next morning, as Harper was at the front desk checking out, a woman in her early 30s swept into the lobby with a confident stride and a bright smile. She spotted Alexander first, her face lighting up. "Big brother," she called, hugging him tightly. "I flew in from Boston, thought it'd be a nice surprise." Harper paused mid-step. "Big brother?" Alexander smiled. "Claire, why didn't you tell me? I thought you were busy." The woman turned to Harper, offering her hand. "You must be my brother's new colleague. I'm Claire Reed." Harper shook it, feeling a stone drop from her chest. Sister. She was his sister. Alexander glanced at her, his tone lightly teasing. "You heard that, right? Claire's my sister. I call her almost every day." When Claire left, Alexander stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Now I get why you were so cold to me yesterday." Harper gave a quick smile. "I was just tired." He narrowed his eyes. "Or, you thought I was talking to a girlfriend?" Harper bit her lip. "Well, it did sound like it." Alexander exhaled, shaking his head in a way that was half amused, half exasperated. "If I had a girlfriend, I'd tell you. And if I wanted to invite you to dinner, I wouldn't need a work excuse." Harper stayed silent, her heart pounding so hard she was afraid he might hear it. On the plane, they sat next to each other. Harper didn't wear her sleep mask upside down this time, and she didn't dunk her napkin in water either. She still managed to sneak a photo of Alexander sleeping, only to hide her phone quickly when he stirred. "Give me that," he said, holding out his hand. "No," she said, clutching the phone to her chest. He smirked. "Hand it over and I'll pick the best one." Harper laughed and gave it to him. In that moment, the wall she'd built the day before dissolved completely, leaving only the easy warmth between them, and something else neither of them was ready to name. Since returning to New York, things at Reed Motors had gone back to normal, or at least they appeared to. Alexander was still buried in meetings and contracts, while Harper was busy with her quirky illustrations and darted around the showroom, snapping photos for campaigns. But Harper knew there was a thin, almost invisible layer between them, not the ice of when they'd first met, nor the warm spark from Miami. This was awkwardness. Whenever she caught Alexander looking at her, she'd remember him calmly explaining about his sister and that pointed line, "If I wanted to take you to dinner, I wouldn't need a work excuse." Just thinking about it made her cheeks heat. "Nope, can't let this sit here," she told herself, shading in the background of a new poster. "We're not stopping the story at this half-baked, awkward point." That night, Harper sat alone in her tiny apartment. The city outside was awash in light, but her laptop screen filled with open sketches couldn't hold her attention. She propped her chin in her palm, thinking about Miami the night by the beach, the "if you change your mind, I still have the table" text. Now it made her grin more than blush. And that's when the idea hit. She would apologize. Harper's style funny, a little ridiculous, and designed to make him laugh. She opened her animation software, a blank white canvas staring back. Two chibi characters took shape. Mr. Ice, a cute version of Alexander, still managing to look serious, and the hoodie girl, Harper herself, with her messy bun and trademark yellow hoodie. In the video, Hoodie Girl hides behind a giant potted plant, eavesdropping on Mr. Ice's phone call. The words "I miss you" appear in big letters, hearts flying everywhere. Next, Hoodie Girl imagines a mysterious girlfriend and runs around the showroom crying rivers of tears over-the-top cartoon style, complete with fish swimming by. The twist? Mr. Ice introduces his girlfriend, who turns out to be an Aston Martin wearing a wig, a floral dress, and sunglasses. Text appears, "Sorry for accusing my boss," and his four-wheeled girlfriend. She added light jazz, sound effects, sneaky footsteps, a long ooh when Hoodie Girl discovers the truth, and the engine rev standing in for the girlfriend's hello. To top it off, Harper recorded her own voiceover. "And so, I learned never to stand behind a potted plant listening in unless I want to turn myself into the punchline of my own story." By 4 a.m., she leaned back in her chair, eyes burning but grinning. If Alexander didn't laugh at this, he was a robot. The next morning, after adding a few last color pops, she exported the file and opened an email. Subject: Apology to boss. Animated edition, no ads, no refunds. Body: Watch this before deciding to reduce the repair bill by at least 5%. She took a deep breath and hit send. Then she closed her laptop and spent the next hour imagining his reactions, the eyebrow raise, the deadpan, or her favorite hope, the laugh. An hour later, while she was deep in a sketch, her phone buzzed. "Alexander, I had to mute myself in a meeting because I was laughing. You just cost me my serious image with the board." Harper doubled over laughing, typing back, "Then my mission is complete. Now about the repair bill." His reply was instant, 0% reduction, but you've been promoted from nuisance to strategic nuisance. That afternoon, Alexander walked out of his office and straight to Harper's desk. A few coworkers glanced over curiously. "That video," he began slowly, pausing. Harper grinned. "Well, too good, right?" Well done," he said, voice low but without sarcasm. "You wanted to say cute, but you're afraid it'll ruin your image, right?" she teased. "I don't use that word," he replied evenly. "But you're thinking it," she shot back, eyes sparkling. He didn't confirm, but Harper saw the subtle twitch at the corner of his mouth, that telltale sign he was hiding a smile. Before closing time, Alexander surprised her. "Coffee? Consider it. Returning the favor for your Harper-style apology." Harper feigned caution. "If this is revenge for drawing you in a dress, I'm not going. Number, I know a little place. Quiet, best cappuccino in the city." The cafe was tucked in a cobblestone alley, all red brick and warm yellow lights. Harper picked a seat by the window. Alexander ordered a mocha for her and a cappuccino for himself. "So, that video took you how long?" he asked as he set her cup down. 4.5 hours, including time spent laughing like a maniac," Harper said, sipping her mocha. "You know, the girlfriend scene had me laughing so hard my neighbor knocked on the wall." Alexander chuckled. "I honestly don't know why I keep letting you work in the showroom. Because deep down, you know you need someone who'll make you laugh, especially when you don't want to," Harper said, winking. He didn't argue. His gaze lingered on her a little longer than usual. A week later, rain poured over the city. The showroom was quiet. Most of the staff had gone home early. Harper sat at her desk sketching when Alexander appeared with 2 cups of hot chocolate. "Consider it a reward for not causing a single incident this week," he said, setting one down in front of her. "You're breaking your record for complimenting me," she teased. They sat across from each other, drifting into conversations unrelated to work. Alexander talked about a childhood spent in his grandfather's garage, while Harper shared how she juggled school and part-time jobs to pay for her art program. Time slipped by. When Harper finally checked the clock, they'd been talking for over an hour without noticing. That night, just after she got home, her phone buzzed. "Alexander, I saved that video. A reminder not to judge someone too quickly." Harper, "Are you talking about me or yourself?" Alexander, "Both." Smiling, Harper opened her sketchbook. She drew Mr. Ice and the hoodie girl sitting by a cafe window, rain outside, cappuccino and mocha steaming between them. Underneath, she wrote, "Sometimes the best apology is a story that makes you both laugh." That morning, Reed Motors looked like a stage about to welcome the strictest judge in the world. Everything gleamed so much so that if a pin dropped, you'd hear the tinkle echo across the floor. The cleaning crew had polished the glass doors 3 times, reception had swapped in fresh flowers, and the lighting had been adjusted so that each luxury car glittered under the showroom lamps. Alexander, immaculate in a perfectly tailored navy suit, stepped out of his office, swept his gaze across the floor and said, "No mistakes, not today." No one dared to smile, much less joke. The only exception was Harper, standing off to the side at the reception desk, sketchbook in hand, wondering how she'd wandered into a movie scene this tense. At exactly 10 o'clock, a sleek black limousine pulled up to the entrance. Out stepped Richard Campbell, a legend in the real estate world, infamous for demands harder than reaching the moon and buying decisions that could make or break a company. In his 60s, tall, clad in a charcoal suit, with a silver inlaid walnut cane that was both a walking aid and a badge of authority, he cut an imposing figure. Alexander greeted him. "Welcome to Reed Motors. It's an honor to have you here." Campbell gave only a curt nod, his eyes sharp as blades scanning the showroom. Even from across the floor, Harper felt the temperature drop. After half an hour of looking over the cars, Campbell stopped in front of a midnight blue Aston Martin DBS. "Beautiful, solid engine, refined interior." He nodded, then added casually, "But I want something one of a kind. A gift that makes this car mine and mine alone. If not, I'll look elsewhere." The air froze. Every staff member glanced at one another, then at Alexander. Harper's heart rate spiked. This was a multi-million-dollar deal. Losing it would be a blow felt across the entire team. She bit her lip, then before she could stop herself, stepped forward. "Mr. Campbell, what if I painted a portrait for you directly on the hood using special automotive paint? A true one-of-a-kind artwork no one else would have." Alexander shot her, "Are you insane?" "Look." Campbell raised a brow, intrigued. "You paint?" Harper swallowed. "Yes, I promise not to damage the original finish, and it would turn your car into your personal statement piece." A pause, then he nodded. "Do it. 1 hour." Yes, sir," Harper blurted, her brain catching up to the consequences a beat too late. Alexander pulled her aside, voice low. "You do realize if you mess this up—" "I know, but if we don't try, the deal's gone anyway. I've painted helmets, fridges, mugs. This is just the same thing, only way more expensive." Her palms were already damp. He held her gaze for a long moment, weighing his options. Finally, he sighed. "Fine, but if you ruin it, you're working here until you're 80. Harper didn't even know why she was doing this, but she spread a protective sheet around the car's hood, opened the special paints she always carried for street murals, and got to work. The room fell silent. The only sounds were the brush whispering against the surface and the steady tick of the wall clock. Every stroke was a choice. There was no undo button. Light glared off the hood, forcing her to squint. A bead of sweat slid down her temple, which she wiped with her sleeve. Alexander stood a few meters away, arms folded, eyes locked on her every move. The rest of the staff didn't even breathe too loudly. 30 minutes in, Campbell's face began to emerge on the metal. Harper was so focused she didn't hear his footsteps until he was right behind her. "Continue," he said, and Harper thought she caught a trace of a smile in his voice. Her wrist ached, her pulse pounded. "Don't slip! Don't slip!" Alexander came closer, handing her a bottle of water. "Drink. Don't pass out on me now." She took a quick sip, inhaled deeply, and kept going. With 10 minutes left, she moved on to the colors deep blue for the background, gold for the trim, and a rich burgundy for accents. The brush moved quickly but with precision. Sweat soaked the back of her hoodie. Every time she switched paint pots, the clink of the lids sounded like drum beats in everyone's chest. A receptionist whispered, "It's like watching the finals of MasterChef, except the main course is a $500,000 hood." Harper laid down the last stroke, exhaling like she'd just finished a marathon. Her hand trembled slightly as she set the brush aside. The finished piece was a pop art portrait of Campbell, eyes brimming with confidence, his career's signature skyscraper behind him, blending seamlessly into the car's midnight blue, as though it had always belonged there. Silence. Campbell stepped forward, studied it for a few moments, then laughed heartily. Brilliant! Young lady, you've made this car mine and mine alone. A collective exhale swept the room. Some staff nearly clapped but held back out of decorum. Alexander smiled, a real one Harper had rarely seen. Campbell turned to him. Keep the painting. I'm buying the car. Draw up the contract. As the paperwork was printed, the buzz of relief filled the air. When the final signature was in place, Alexander shook Campbell's hand, his gaze flicking to Harper with a silent, well done. Campbell stopped by her on the way out. You're talented. I love it. Alexander moved closer, his voice lower. You just saved a multi-million-dollar deal. I'm impressed. Harper tried to play it cool. So, the repair bill's settled? He smirked. Not quite. I still haven't fixed the car. But consider a few months of your debt prepaid. She pouted. You know how to keep people working for you? His gaze was more profound than usual. Maybe that's exactly what I want. Harper turned away, but her smile gave her away. If this debt meant she got to stay, she wasn't complaining. On Friday morning, Harper was busy coloring a new sketch in the corner of her workspace when the phone rang. The screen lit up with the name Alexander Reed. She hesitated for a few seconds before answering. Are you free at 10 p.m. tomorrow? His voice was low but carried a hint of mystery. I think so. Why? The launch of Reed Motors' new model. You're coming with me. Harper chuckled. You're inviting me because you're afraid I might spill coffee on the contract again, aren't you? This time, I have something to tell you. He paused for a beat, then hung up before she could ask anything else. The next day, Harper was restless. This was the first time she'd attended such a high-end event. After rummaging through her closet, she chose a simple but flattering black dress, pairing it with the only pair of high heels that didn't make her look like she was practicing tightrope walking. When Alexander's limousine stopped in front of her place, Harper stepped out, nearly twisting her ankle when the wind blew her hair across her face. Alexander got out, opened the car door for her, his eyes scanning her from head to toe. You look better in black than I imagined. Thanks, I'll take that as a compliment. Harper smiled, though her heart was beating faster. The car launch was held at a five-star hotel in the city center. From the moment she stepped into the lobby, Harper was overwhelmed by the golden lights reflecting off the crystal ceiling, the perfectly tailored suits, and the constant clinking of champagne glasses. Don't be nervous, just stay beside me, Alexander leaned in and said quietly. Uh-huh. If I'm nervous, it's because of you, Harper replied, quickening her pace to keep up. Camera flashes went off as they entered the ballroom. Harper caught whispers behind her. Who's that? She's not from the auto industry. Alexander led her toward the stage, where a new supercar sat in the center under a red cover. After a brief introduction from the MC, he was invited up to speak. Harper stood below, trying to stay calm under dozens of lenses. But instead of immediately talking about the car, Alexander began telling a story. A few months ago, I had a rather interesting incident. My Aston Martin got a minor scratch right in front of a cafe, and the culprit is standing right down there. He pointed toward Harper. Everyone turned to look. Harper froze, eyes wide, and was about to step back when a female staff member stopped her. Just stay right there. Alexander signaled for an assistant to bring out a large frame canvas. He turned back to the audience. Today, before introducing our new model, I'd like to share a special gift for the person who made me realize that sometimes a scratch can be the start of something good. The cover was pulled down. Harper held her breath. It was a painting Alexander had done himself, capturing her shocked expression as she stood next to the scratch car, holding a bottle of moss green nail polish. The brushwork was so vivid that Harper could almost hear her voice from that day. See? Almost good as new. The ballroom erupted in laughter. Harper covered her face, torn between embarrassment and being deeply moved. Alexander looked straight at her, his voice low but warm. If you hadn't scratched my car that day, I wouldn't have met the person who makes my life happier every single day. The murmurs died down instantly. All she could hear was the pounding of her own heart. She couldn't believe this usually cold, composed man was saying this in front of hundreds of guests. He stepped down from the stage, walked straight to her, and stopped just one step away. Harper, I'm not good at romantic gestures, but I do know I want you by my side, not just at the showroom, but for the rest of my life. She swallowed hard, torn between laughing and crying. You're confessing in front of the international press. Alexander Reed. That's exactly why I can't take it back. He smiled lightly, rare and utterly sincere. Harper looked up. The stage lights reflected in her eyes like tiny sparks. If I say yes, will you erase my repair bill? Alexander chuckled, stepped closer, and whispered, I'll erase all of it, but I'll add another contract, a lifetime one. Applause burst out like fireworks. Harper laughed in the middle of it and nodded. Alexander took her hand and led her back to the stage. The quick-witted MC announced, and here, ladies and gentlemen, not only do we have the launch of a new car, but also the start of a new love story. The whole ballroom laughed. Harper shot him a side glance. You just turned me into part of your PR campaign. Exactly. And this will be Reed Motors' longest-running campaign. Alexander replied, eyes never leaving hers. Leaving the car launch, Harper still felt like everything had been a dream. She, the girl who had once accidentally scratched her boss's car, was now walking side by side with him out of a five-star hotel under the curious glances and polite farewells of the guests. Alexander opened the car door for her. Harper slid into the seat, her fingers quietly reaching for the miniature frame painting he'd placed in the back seat. The artwork of that fateful scratch made her lips curl into an involuntary smile. Not tired of looking at it yet? Alexander asked as he started the engine. Nope, because it's beautiful and funny, Harper replied, still keeping her eyes on it. I thought you'd say, because it captures the most important moment of my life. Harper turned toward him, raising an eyebrow. Are you hinting that I should be touched? Alexander just smiled, saying nothing, though his grip on the steering wheel tightened slightly. They didn't head straight home. Instead, Alexander unexpectedly turned onto a small road that led up a hill, offering a panoramic view of the city glowing below. Harper pressed her hand to the window, awestruck as ribbons of light stretched like a river of gold. It's beautiful, she whispered. I wanted you to see the city from this angle, Alexander said, switching off the engine and gazing outside. The first time I came here, I thought, one day, I'd bring someone special. Harper chuckled softly, warmth blooming in her chest. And it ended up being the girl who scratched your car. Exactly. The girl who drove me crazy and then made me laugh more than anyone else. They fell into a comfortable silence, the only sound being the gentle breeze sweeping past. Harper suddenly recalled every time they had crossed paths from the cafe to the showroom to the trip to Miami, all the way to tonight. Each memory felt like a strange puzzle piece that had somehow fallen perfectly into place. Alexander popped the trunk and took out a paper bag. He handed it to her. For you. Inside was a beige knit beanie, simple but soft to the touch. It's cold tonight. Wear it so you don't catch a cold. Harper laughed. Didn't know you paid attention to little things like this. I only pay attention to one person, he said softly, just enough to make her heartbeat skip. She put on the beanie, then turned to look at him. You know, if you had confessed at the showroom, I probably would have thought you were joking. But at the car launch, in front of so many people, I couldn't imagine you not being serious. I've never been more serious, Alexander replied plainly, his eyes fixed on hers. In that moment, Harper felt the space between them shrink. No longer boss and employee, no longer just a running joke about a repair bill, but two people truly seeing and understanding each other. Alexander slowly reached out, brushing away a loose strand of hair from her cheek. Can I kiss you? He asked, his voice so low and sincere it made Harper laugh. You just confessed in front of the press, and now you're asking for permission? Because I want you to agree, not because the moment forces it. Harper stayed quiet for a second, then gave a slight nod. Alexander leaned in until only a few centimeters separated them. The faint scent of mint from him mingled with the crisp night air. When his lips met hers, Harper felt her heart pound hard, yet there was a deep, unexpected calm in it. It was an answer that didn't need words. The kiss wasn't rushed, just long enough to share warmth and sincerity. When they pulled back, Harper murmured, "You know, I think I just erased a few more months off that bill." Alexander chuckled, resting his forehead lightly against hers. "There's no bill anymore. Just the days. I want you here." They stayed there a while longer, gazing at the city. Harper leaned against his shoulder, her heart feeling light. And in the golden glow of thousands of lights, she knew that ever since that fateful scratch, her life had taken an entirely new road. After the high-profile car launch, everything changed in the blink of an eye. Harper, the girl once assigned to pouring coffee and tidying paperwork, now sat in the Reed Motors creative office, facing a massive idea board and surrounded by a young, dynamic design team. Alexander had officially appointed her as head of creative, giving a brief but heart-thudding reason. "No one else can make a client sign a contract while making the entire showroom laugh. I need you here and in my life." The news spread quickly through the showroom. At first, everyone thought it was a joke. But when they saw Alexander personally driving Harper to work every morning, having lunch together at the small salad shop down the street, no one doubted it anymore. Harper still teased, "Are you sure you didn't promote me just to deduct that repair bill?" Alexander smiled, his gaze serious. "That bill has already turned into a lifetime contract." One weekend morning, Alexander suggested, "Tomorrow let's go for a picnic outside the city, and we'll take the Aston Martin." Harper blinked. "The one with the scratch from the first day I met you?" "Yep, it's still there." "You haven't had it repainted?" "Number, you'll know why." That was all he said, leaving Harper with a head full of curiosity. The next day, the sky was clear, and the sun was gentle. The Aston Martin rolled out of the city along a willow-lined riverside road. Sitting in the passenger seat, Harper nibbled on a croissant while sneaking glances at the legendary scratch on the car door, a tiny smudge of pale pink nail polish, standing out against the midnight blue paint. Their destination was a wide, grassy field by the lake. Alexander spread out a picnic blanket and unpacked the basket. Brie cheese, crusty baguettes, fresh strawberries, and a chilled bottle of white wine. Harper's jaw dropped. "You prepared all this? This doesn't seem like you." Alexander raised an eyebrow. "I've learned how to surprise you." When the sun rose higher, Harper kicked off her shoes, walked barefoot on the grass, and approached the car. Her fingers gently traced the pale pink mark. "You know this scratch is a lucky charm. Don't you dare get rid of it," she said, half joking, half serious. Alexander stepped up behind her, his voice warm. "Agreed. As long as you stay with me for life." Harper turned to him, but before she could reply, he took a navy velvet box from his jacket pocket. Inside was a platinum ring with a sparkling, cushion-cut diamond. "Harper, if you hadn't scratched my car that day, I wouldn't have met the person who makes every day brighter. Will you marry me?" Harper laughed through misty eyes. "You're proposing next to a scratch?" "Yes, so you'll remember that sometimes what seems like bad luck turns out to be the best thing that ever happened." She nodded and he slid the ring onto her finger. They embraced, the sound of the lake breeze blending with their racing heartbeats. 3 months later, on a crisp autumn afternoon, a small chapel on a lavender-covered hillside was filled with guests. Harper walked in wearing an off-shoulder satin wedding gown, the train gliding over a path strewn with white petals. Alexander stood at the end of the aisle in a classic black tuxedo, his eyes never leaving her. When the officiant asked, "Do you take?" Harper squeezed his hand and said, "Yes, and the scratch too." Laughter rippled through the chapel, but Alexander leaned down and whispered, "I agree, to keep both you and that scratch forever." The wedding reception took place outdoors under a canopy of fairy lights. In the middle of the celebration, the Aston Martin, still bearing its pale pink mark, sat adorned with white flowers and ribbons, a proud testament to their love story. At the end of the night, they drove away with a "just married" sign rattling behind them. Harper rested her head on Alexander's shoulder, smiling. "You know, sometimes happiness starts with a single scratch and someone who refuses to erase it." Alexander gave her hand on the wheel a gentle squeeze. "And I'll never erase it." The Aston Martin sped off into the sunset, carrying the lucky scratch and a promise for a lifetime.